I'm so excited to share a conversation I had with the insanely talented writer and director Agnieszka Smoczyńska. Agnieszka is a Polish film and television writer-director. She is most known for her debut feature film, The Lure, which was released in the US by Criterion Collection in 2017. Her film, The Silent Twins, is the astounding true story of twin sisters who only communicated with one another. As a result, they created a rich, fascinating world to escape the reality of their own lives. Based on the best-selling book The Silent Twins, the film stars Letitia, Wright and Tamara, Lawrance. It's an extraordinary film, and it was so thoughtfully assembled by Agnieszka. She creates such beautiful worlds in her films. Absolutely stunning and surreal. The Silent Twins is a captivating work of art. The story is extraordinary, the performances were unforgettable, and the production was absolutely exquisite. Every little detail in this film was considered and masterfully placed with care. Agnieszka delivered a masterpiece. With all that being said, let's jump into the conversation. Agnieszka, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you? It's it's 9 p.m. in Poland now.
So wait, where in Poland are you right now?
In Warsaw.
How's the weather in Warsaw?
It's 20 degrees, so it's not so bad. It's nice. Yeah, and there is a sun. Yeah.
That's good. Well, after watching this movie, I could literally spend the next 8 hours talking to you about it.
Ah.
I know there won't be enough time, so let's just jump right into this. I'm always fascinated by the process in which filmmakers and directors find stories, and ultimately what makes them say yes. So how did this project come to you, and what on the page made you want to make it?
I got the script from Andrea Siegel, the scriptwriter. She watched The Lure, my previous movie. It was my debut. It was during this time released in US, and she loved The Lure. During this time, she was searching for a director who could tell her script, her story. And she just, she asked me, on the Facebook, okay, hi, I love The Lure, and I have a story maybe might interested you. And of course, she sent the script via reps. And then I remember when she just wrote me a few words about the June and Jennifer's story that is based on a true story. And the girls two black twins from Barbados who grew up in Wales. And when they went to school, they decided not to say any word besides themselves. And they had a very huge imagination, and they were writers, and they wanted to communicate with the outside world with their writing. And at the same time, their relationship was very complex because they were excluded from the community, and they were decided to be together and rely on each other. And I was fascinated by it. And then when I remember the moment when I read the script, I knew that I just want to tell the story, and I knew that I have to bring the story to the world, and I did everything to tell the story.
Well, you did an incredible job. It was in good hands with you.
Thank you.
I didn't know what to expect. I read about it, and the moment it started, I was hooked. I mean, even from the title sequence, all the little details that you put into your stories, and I've gone and watched a lot of things you've created. But I realized that you're a very visual storyteller, and I think that having two characters are central to the story that don't speak to one another is quite difficult to push along the narrative without dialogue. But you did it in such a masterful way by creating these incredible worlds and the tension between the characters and the society around them. I just have one question. How? How did you do this? How did you create such a compelling story without dialogue in the majority of the movie? And there's a lot of dialogue, but not between the two central characters. How did you create this?
It was very challenging. I remember it was, of course, in the script, and I was surprised that the title is The Silent Twins, but they talked very, they all the time talk, and also they use words in a way of communication. Because what I found very moving and heartbreaking, that they were silent to the outside world, but they really wanted to communicate with the outside world. And what I found very interesting, that they want to communicate in a much more unique way. They wanted to communicate with the written words and with the writing and with their imagination, and they want to share their imagination with the outside world. But, in terms of just to start writing stories, and you have to also, what also moved me very deeply, that the first course which they enroll, it was the art of the communication. And remember, there is a scene when they bought the brochure of the art of the communication. So this juxtaposition that they were silent about this at the same time they wanted to communicate, and to show this that we could adapt their writings and their stories into the movie. I decided to use more the writings. Like there is a pugilist parts from Jennifer's book, which is about Bobby and the heart of Bobby, and also about parrots. These parts weren't in the script. I found this in Marjorie's book, and I just wanted to tell about June and Jennifer as characters, not only use dialogues, that's what you said, but use their inner words. So to use their imagination and just to follow their imagination. And I started to study them as a character. I started to think about them, what kind of the movies they could watch, what kind of the book they could read, what the television programs they used to, during this time they could watch. And also I started to dig more and more in their writings, and they were amazing for me. And I invited my collaborators, director of photography, Kuba Kijowski, sound designer, Marcin Lenarczyk, also Zuza Wrońska, who is poet, songwriter, and also composer, Marcin Macuk, production designer. We're sitting together and we're talking about them and their imaginations and their life. And then we started to imagine how we can use cinema to tell more about them as writers, as artists.
I have all these notes from watching it last night, and it says art direction, wardrobe, production design, and the worlds you created were just stunning. Like I could pause the movie and just look in the room, and there's the photos on the wall, like all the little details that were so thoughtfully placed. And every little detail from the desks, the walls, the windows, everything was so well done. I can tell through your work you must have a massive imagination, and you had to have had this from a very young age. Are you a painter? Do you paint yourself?
No, I was studying history of art. I always, love to, of course, watch paintings, and I can't paint, and also I can't, sing, I can't act, but to be director is the perfect for me, because you can use all of these things. Yeah, and that's what you said, that the pictures and the visual sides, it's very important to me.
I can tell. And it's not just, your body of work speaks to this, including your short films. One of my favorite scenes in the entire film was a sequence, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but the sequence following what I'll call the fire, right? And it's a beautifully surreal moment, and it's a big set piece. And when I saw it, I was really surprised that it was in this movie. Like it's so big. It's a very big scene in a set piece. The wardrobe, again, the design, but their choreography. Now we're adding a whole nother element of dance and physical motion performance. How long did you have to shoot that sequence?
6 hours. 6 hours, but of course not because in a swimming pool we had 2 hours. It's how can I say? It's we didn't have too much money. It was like 6 hours, and in a hairdresser, and when there were writers, we had like 6 hours around this. Yeah.
I cannot believe that. Because that's why I said, like, I was so surprised to see that.
Me neither. To be honest, me neither. But because we did before the Lure, the musical, I knew that okay, we can do this. How Jennifer says, but it's very challenging, and it's that you have to prepare before, of course, everything. We had the rehearsals before, but not too many. It's not a high budget movie.
Well, no, and that's why I was so surprised. And it's such and that's where when it happened, I had to stop and take a note. I'm like, because I work on the studio side, and I'd work for big studio projects, and that sequence would take a studio like a week and a half to shoot. You'd get, it's like a week and a half, and it's full day shoots to do that. And I'm like, I can't imagine they had a week and a half to shoot this. 6 hours. No. Wow. And then 2 in the pool.
Yes. And in the pool, it was like 2 hours. Or maybe, of course, it was supposed to be 2 hours, but of course it was 4 hours. It was much longer. Much longer. It's not too much. As you can see, you can watch it. But of course, we had to prepare everything before we have to, overthink. And it's not like that you go and you have only 6 hours. You prepare for months for this.
Well, you again nailed it. The more I learned after watching this, I immediately spent like weeks just like reading about you. And I see that you're extremely thoughtful with every single element. There's nothing that goes by that isn't thoughtfully put there, right? And I have to imagine that maybe while in art school, you were drawn to the surrealism chapters in those books. But I noticed with that track, that Amanda Lear song, Enigma, that she was a dear friend of Salvador Dali. And I'm like, wait, is there a coincidence here with the surrealism and using this song here? It's so good.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but I just loved her voice.
It's so good.
Because we are looking for the good songs, and we are really, really, really. I remember that Pavel Yuzbuk who gave us songs, and it lasts, I don't know, weeks, and I couldn't find a good song, and I just loved the voice.
It's so good. And to your point earlier about juxtaposition, her voice, the track, and then visually what I'm seeing, that just, it's incredible.
Thank you.
When you look back at your experience in production, what was the hardest day making this project?
To be honest, every day was the hardest day. For me, every day was the hardest day because it was during the COVID. Everybody has the mask. In terms of the challenging, every day was a challenge for me, really. But if you ask me, for me personal as a director, which was the hardest when there was a second unit, and the second unit, it means that another director comes on the set, and it was the scene which I have in my own head, this swimming pool scene, and it was supposed to have another director, and I had to came on the set, and I had to be on the set, and I had to direct, and this was the hardest moment for me, because now I know that I would never agree that somebody, of course the director was great and excellent, but something what you have in your own head, and it's very hard to explain sometimes to another director what you have in your own, brain. And there are scenes which are not in the movie because I imagine them in a different way, and this is, I think it was one of the biggest lesson during the shooting.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a complex scene. There's so much, the way the camera angle is with the water fluidity, all of that. That's tricky to do.
Yes.
When you see the images in your mind, when you see a scene like that, what do you seeing?
It's a process. It's not that it's always you start when there was a line that when the guy in the court say, okay, then we have also a swimming pool. And then we started to study the swimming pools in UK during this time. And then, of course, we started to studying swimming pools in Poland, which we had because the location was in Poland. And we thought, okay, what June and Jennifer, how she could imagine the swimming pool. And then I thought, okay, they could watch musicals during this time, and there are guys, the white guys who are, watching them, and the guys are like Waynes, who they already met in the past. So it's like, I love this process, and I love this moment of working, because I'm sitting with my collaborators, and you invent, okay, this is this, and then I'm the person who had to combine all of these ideas and just to what is the most important, and who impose the whole scene and the tone of the scene and how the scene looks like is the character. And always I come back to the character, and I think, okay, what June and what Jennifer, what she could imagine. And then you think, okay, what she experienced, in her life, and what kind of the color she could have. And of course, then I'm working and talking with my DOP, director of photography. And for him, the light is the most important thing. And then we talk about the light, because we wanted to have the light in the visions. We wanted to have much more warm light, that it was in a realistic scenes. Because in Wales during this time, and then in the UK in Broadmoor, the light was completely different than in visionary scenes.
Yeah, I saw that. The color tone in their home, that bluish green, is so beautiful.
Yes.
And the performances, the characters, both young and old, as they they moved to that home, and the color being consistently that same tone was so amazing.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend in post-production on this film?
We finished the movie in April. We finished shooting, and then we have one extra day because of the COVID. We have to interrupt, and then we have to come back on the set for the last day. And the last day was in November. And during this time, we were editing the movie. So we started to work on the movie from May till I think March.
When people go see this film, when they walk out of the theater, what do you hope they feel, and what do you hope they recall?
I hope they will be moved, very deeply moved by Jennifer and John's story and by their relationship, and also what they have to go through for their whole life, but also what beautiful relationship and complex and at the same time painful and maybe you can say toxic. But I hope they could go through June and Jennifer's journey with them.
What do you think makes a good story?
Conflict. A good conflict, to set a good conflict.
Is that when you're looking for stories, are you trying to find a narrative that has that strong conflict built into it?
Yes, I think, and it's when I'm starting to find a good story, it has to be the story which resonates with me.
Personally.
Which is universal and unique.
Yeah. I read that in Lure, the dance sequence in that restaurant, the dance floor, I read an article where you grew up in a restaurant environment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And growing up in that sort of environment, did you learn about film? Did you learn about life and filmmaking while growing up in that environment?
No, when I grew up in this dancing environment, I knew nothing about, what I learned. It was totally different world compared to the communism time and with the outside world. It wasn't like New York nowadays or New York in the 70s and 80s. It was Warsaw when it was Szklarska Poręba when I grew up. So it was completely different world. And but what I learned for myself as a filmmaker now is that my mom was a manager of this kind of the restaurant and she has to run the whole restaurant. And I think I learned many, many things from her.
What's the biggest thing you learned from your mom?
Empathy. That empathy is the most important thing. Yes, this is crucial.
I love that. How do you get through a day where you're like, you've got the big set piece and you've only got 6 hours and you wake up and you're probably like, okay, I can't do this, but then you realize you can. What is it? Is it your belief?
Yeah, I love this because I love challenges, and because I love my job. This is my passion, and I love to go on the set. Of course, when I remember when I was working on my first movie, I was very stressed. And with the second, I was stressed too, but in a different way. And the same with the first movie. I found much more joy during the shooting movie, because I know that, okay, I'm trying just to appreciate that my work is like I'm still a kid, which is in a room, and I can play with the dolls. I can invent the whole world, and people are with me, and we are, collaborate together. And we want to tell stories which are important, which can move people at the end. So I love this. And that's why, of course, it always depends on the people who you work with. And it always depends on the mood, on the set, and etc. But now, when I was working on the Silent Twins, I was much more relaxed than when I was working on my first movie.
That's great. When you look back at the first short you made, right? Like, what advice would you give to yourself then about filmmaking?
I remember when I was a student, when I was during my short, I loved the moment when I was on the set, and when there is a feeling, I remember this, even physically, I felt that something that it's like, you can say an orgasm, something that wow, this is this. And then what I've learned, I remember Andrzej Wajda, a Polish director, when he said, the most important thing is from your shorts and from every movie, just to have the lesson and to understand what you did wrong in this movie. And now I'm trying to take the lesson from every movie and to develop myself in the future.
What is your comfort food when you're having a very bad day and you want a good meal? You know, like you're just like, it just make you feel good inside. What is it? What meal do you make for yourself, or what do you get?
I love chocolate. I love chocolate in every, I don't know, bar of chocolate. I love chocolate cake. I love hot chocolate. I love chocolate.
What are words to live by, or your favorite Polish phrase?
Wyluzuj, nie jest tak źle. Albo zawsze mogło być gorzej, no, tak.
What does that mean?
Okay, take it easy. Take it easy. Calm down, it could be much worse. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you've got a busy day and it's late there in Warsaw. It's an extraordinary film and I can't wait for the world to see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. The Silent Twins is in theaters September 16th. Please go see this film. It's incredible. And if you do, or actually when you do, let me know what you think. The Silent Twins screenplay was written by Andrea Siegel, based on the book by Marjorie Wallace. A special thank you to the team at Focus Features and Ginsberg Libby. The Smith Society is produced by Voxy, edited by Marshall Baker. Our theme song was produced by Steady Cadence. As always, thank you for listening. If you have a moment, the easiest way to support the podcast is by leaving a short review. It means a lot. Thank you all.